All right. Thank you all for your patience. Thank you for coming. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our guest today, Mr. Eric Schneider.
Thank you. Please.
There we go. All right, try that now.
1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2.
I just powered it on.
1, 2.
No?
Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ear. See, I'm not just a classless, know-nothing jazz musician. I'm a classless, know-something jazz musician. Anyhow, thank you so much for having me. I'm honored. And when I watch people dance, I say, wow, I sure wish I could do that. I can play a concert in front of a couple thousand people and not care. It's not that I don't care, I don't get nervous. But if I'm dancing and I think two people are watching me, I think they're looking at me, judging, excuse me, and laughing. Not necessarily, my God, what a klutz. Anyhow, thank you for being here. For me to have the opportunity to talk about two of my favorite subjects, me and music, man, it doesn't get better, and it doesn't get much better than this. And I've been thinking about this for about 2 weeks, and it wasn't until last night that I started writing notes. And I've got 5 pages, and believe me, I did not memorize the speech. A lot of my references will be dated, and I do not, if I offend anybody, it's not on purpose. I sometimes am verbally dyslexic. I'll say, yeah, he went down, and I say the opposite of what I mean. And it can be confusing to those not familiar with Ericese. Happily, my wife eventually figured out what the hell I meant when I was saying things. But I'm very fortunate. I'm one of the luckiest guys in the world. I'm 72 years old. How the hell that happened, I don't know. I used to be the youngest guy in every bandstand. Now, especially with tonight, I'm the oldest, and it happens. And I'm in reasonably good health. I've done a lot of stupid things, like I smoked for 50 years, and I'm alive, and I'm playing music, and I think I'm playing it as well as I ever have. I know I'm enjoying it as much as I ever have. I don't get called for the lousy gigs anymore, and I would do them. You know, I don't depend on each job to make sure that I'm going to eat the next month. I got a couple bucks in the bank after doing this for all these years, but I love playing. And even on the crappy gigs the occasional crappy gigs that I do today, I try to find something positive. Maybe I can work out this little figure, and the things you don't want the people in the band or the people who might be listening to for them to figure out that you're working things out, but I do, and but that helps make the music fun. Let's see, very fortunate. Cross that off, okay. 72, oldest guy, doing what I love, verbally dyslexic. I get paid to talk about this stuff. My God, is this great or what? The youngest guy, the oldest guy. Yes, sir.
Yeah, well, we won't make you do any math, but we know you're 72. When did you start playing music?
When I was about 3. My next door neighbor had a piano. Excuse me, she was a piano teacher, and I was able to pick out simple melodies. Maybe I was 5, I don't know. But when I was growing up, my folks gave me, back then I think it was only 78 RPM records, and as soon as I had the physical coordination to put the stylus or the needle to the record, I would listen to music, and I loved it, and I still do. I mean, I listen to things today, some of the things I've listened to for 60 years or 50 years, and I'm still knocked out. And I hear new stuff, I say, damn, how did they do that? That's beautiful, that's brilliant. So I am so lucky And if I say this 70 times more, I will. I'm also very emotional these days. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if it's my hormones or whatever the hell it is, but I get very weepy for no apparent reason. So if anybody objects to tears, well, go fuck you. No, I'm sorry. That was one thing.
Just a reminder, we are maybe going to put this on the internet, but
Yeah, I'm sorry.
We'll leave that.
That is the only thing I'm going to say. That's the only four-letter word that I'm going to use. That's an expletive.
do you remember some of the records you were listening to as a kid?
Yes, Peer Gynt. And if anybody's ever heard me sing, you know why I don't. The only time I sing is when I'm really, really, really drunk. And I've not been that drunk in 25 years. When they say you can't carry a tune in a bucket, yeah, that's me.
Did you listen to any jazz growing up?
My dad loved Ella Fitzgerald and Sinatra. And I wasn't really aware of what it was until later on when I was, I was looking at talking about LPs. My dad had a hi-fi, and he was really ahead of the game. He had a stylus both for mono and stereo. Now back in the day, records came out two different ways, mono or stereo. And when I took lessons, and I hated practicing. I mean, I still hate practicing, but fear of failure is a motivating thing. If I've got this performance and I have to play a certain piece, and I know I can't do it, I'm going to practice it. But my piano teacher used to teach me stuff, and she gave me a boogie woogie book. And I think I was 8 or 9, and I said, I think I said, no, this makes sense. And I started improvising. So when it was time for the recital, everybody did their Bach or Beethoven, and I did my boogie woogie. And it was a pretty good thing. But I've always had a good ear, and that's, the two schools of thought. One is jazz can be taught, jazz can't. And I'm not going to take a stand either way, but I'm saying if you have an ear and you can hear things, that's a tremendous advantage. There are two kinds of players, what they call field players, people who they hear a song and can play it. Now, there's some really, really difficult songs, like some of the stuff that John Coltrane wrote, or some of the stuff that Jerome Kern wrote, that you listen to him, and never in a million years would you think, okay, he's going to go to this chord from that chord. Well, the ear just doesn't want to do it. So eventually you learn how to, fake it a little bit. But now there are those educated, and I don't know, people say music is math. Could be, I don't know, but if there's a saxophone player just going, how can you put that into a formula? I don't think you can. But so there are those who have an ear and can feel, and those who they can listen to a song and they start speaking numerically. Oh yeah, that goes to a 2-5-1 in G, and then it's the minor second, and then I don't know what the hell they're talking about. But if I can hear it, I can play it.
So you're definitely a field player then.
Yes, and I've tried. I mean, and sometimes it's very limiting because I'm on a gig and I'm trying to tell the piano player, and I don't know what the hell the chords are. Now, my ex-girlfriend, who's a fabulous saxophone player, who is doing a job that I should be doing this weekend. No, she's a brilliant player, and she's both a field player and knows the numbers. So if we're playing a gig and I have no idea what the hell, she'll tell the piano player, oh yeah, so 2-5 and down, blah, 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 and it makes it happen. I wish I knew that mathematical stuff, but I just don't.
Well, I'll try to remember that, and I want to ask you about some of the band leaders that you worked with, if they were feel or if they were not. But
Almost all feel.
All feel.
Yeah.
Well, let's maybe start with one of the first very well-known leaders that you played with. After college, you ended up auditioning for Earl Hines. How did that come about? How did you hear that he was looking for a reeds player?
Well, I'm an old man, so everything that I think of reminds me of 5 other things. So any answer could maybe go on until people die of boredom. Long story short, there was something called Jazz at Noon in New York. It was 3 paid musicians played at lunchtime on Fridays, and business people or whomever were encouraged to bring their horns and sit in. That was such a successful thing. The program was started in Chicago, and first time I played there, I was one of the sitter-ins. I was 13, and people told me I didn't disgrace myself too much. Anyhow, I got to be friends with somebody, and then I got to be friends with the people who run Jazz at Noon, and I used to listen to these guys, and I used to play with them, and the person who runs it said, Eric, Earl Hines, drummer, is going to be here next week. Earl is looking for a new saxophone player. So the guy set up his tape and all that stuff, and I played, and I kind of forgot about it till I was, actually I was on vacation, the first vacation I remember taking by myself. And I got a call, I was in St. Lucia, of all places, and there was a call, Earl Hines call. Well, it wasn't like you pick up your phone and dial the country code. It went back and forth. Eventually I spoke with him, and he said, yes, I'm looking for a saxophone player. Would you send me a tape? I said, yeah, I'll be delighted. Or maybe I already sent him a tape and I hadn't heard, and he called me and he said, yeah, now that I think about it, I want you. He said, you have a black suit? Yes. You have a tuxedo? Yes. You have a passport? No. Get one. We'll rehearse for a week in Oakland, whatever, and our first concert will be January 14th, 16th, or 18th at Royce Hall at UCLA. And we rehearsed, and we got the performance together. Earl was, most jazzers think of him, the stuff he did with Louis Armstrong in 26 or 28. Earl thought of himself as a guy who put together the show at the Grand Terrace Ballroom. There were singers, there were dancers, there were jugglers, vaudeville, comedians, maybe animal acts, and Earl put all that together. Anyhow, Jesus, I just had a drop of a bucket. I could just go into complete irrelevance. So I played with Earl for 4 years. Earl cared about 3 things: be on time, be in the uniform of the day, and don't upstage the singer with whom he may or may not have had a relationship. Nobody ever knows. So I was aware to do that. I later on heard that the guy I replaced he wasn't respectful enough to the singer. And Earl took exception to that. Now Earl also used to be an amateur boxer.
Oh.
And he sparred, just trained with Joe Louis. Now Joe was taking it easy, because Joe could have killed him. Anyhow, I guess I can mention his name, he's dead, Rudy Rutherford, who he said regarding the singer, Earl took exception, bam, knocked him out. Well, I made sure I never said anything bad about the singer. Now there's another story. There's a singer in town whose initials are, and she was playing with a big band, and the leader, who was a drummer, said something uncomplimentary. Well, it got back to her, and the musicians will know who I'm talking about. But she got a snootful, put on a camo outfit, came to the club where he was working, tapped him on the shoulder. He turned around, she decked him. One punch knocked him out. Well, ever since then, I was very careful not to offend her in any. She's 87, had just had one hip replaced and the other, and I think she could still take me. So,
I think the lesson I'm learning is everyone be really nice to Naomi. Don't say anything bad about Naomi.
well,
I don't know who will punch you, but someone might.
Well, I tell you what, she sings her buns off, and she, from what I've seen, she dances her buns off as well. The double threat.
So then after, actually, no, let's not move on before that. You recorded an album with Earl Hines.
Which we were playing just now, and
Yeah.
I hadn't heard that in forever. It's like, oh, that sounds familiar. Oh, yeah.
And you said Earl insisted on second booking. So the
Yes.
album is titled Eric and Earl.
Yes.
So how did that come about?
Well, I think it was actually Earl's manager, who was Stanley Dance, who's a British critic, and he managed Earl. He's also wrote a lot of books and did a lot of criticism, and he managed, by criticism, I mean, he did critiques for this newspaper and that magazine. There were 2 or 3 Earl Hines albums that came out, and he didn't want to dilute the oomph of an Earl Hines album any more than releasing 2 at once. So the third one, he said, you take first spelling. And you know, I don't care. I'm just happy to be working with Earl, that Earl Hines agreed to do it. Now, he was my boss, and one of the things that Earl did, now some leaders, it's me, 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 me. Earl said, I've had my day in the sun. If I can help your career, and even to the bass player, the singer, the drummer, to me, anything I can do to help you, I'll do it. So doing this album, I think, was one of the things that Earl did in terms of helping people out. And this is Earl Hines, man. People don't know about him as much as they should today, but I mean, that's true about just about everything. A lot of the pioneers get overlooked, but Earl revolutionized music, and he did stuff. There were more technically gifted players, Art Tatum, I think, for one, but Earl was way up there. And people used to try to figure, how the hell did he do that? And there was a rumor going on that Earl cut the webbing between his fingers, which allowed him to do, okay, I'm gonna try to get fancy here. Legerdemain. There's another word, but I can't think of it. Just really fancy stuff. But no, Earl was a classically trained piano player, and was born with the gift from above, and he revolutionized jazz piano and jazz. And very nice guy, although he had 4 of the nastiest, worst toupees. Here's a guy who's 78, jet black hair, kind of looked like patent leather shoes or something. And he had one that was kind of an afro, and he had another. That's not my job. You know, Earl knew what he looked like, and the singer, who he may or may not have been, whatever, Earl wore those rugs. And one other quick story, I'd say. You all know of Bing Crosby, the singer, right? Was brother Bob was an orchestra leader. And I used to work with Bob when he would come to town. There were a bunch of guys, you know, if it was in Chicago, they'd have a Chicago band. If they were in New York, they'd have a New York band. Well, something happened between Earl Hines and Bob Crosby, and they did not like each other. And Bob once said to me, is Earl still wearing those terrible rugs? And I said, yeah. And then, okay, I just realized I'm about to tell a story that maybe, well, they're all dead. And I don't mean any disrespect to anybody. But Earl said, you know the story about Bob Crosby, don't you? I said, no. He said, well, he was getting intimate with a woman, and while things were going on, she looked up and said, hey, what's Bing really like? I So Earl said stuff about Bob, Bob said stuff about Earl. I'm just happy to play with him, man.
Oh man. So you toured with Earl for about 4 years.
4 years, yes.
Obviously, you've told us about him knocking out some people, but do you have any other highlights from the tour? Or lowlights? I mean, you can go in either direction.
There were really no lowlights. I mean, it was playing with Earl Hines, and we had a show. And there were times, I'm sorry about that. Shut up. Don't you know I'm talking to important people? Go away. No, we had a show, and there was a certain sameness to it, but that was by design. That's the way Earl wanted it. And as I said, Earl thought of himself as the impresario putting together a show. So Earl would start out solo piano, then he'd be joined by the bass and drums, and then I would eventually join him, and then the singer. And Earl had Parkinson's, among other things. He had difficulty walking, and he had a bit of arthritis in his hands. And there were some nights, and some of the pianos he played, it was like, man, you had to be a weightlifter just to be able to press the keys. But Earl made bad pianos sound great. And Earl was a show business guy. The show goes on. We were playing the Parisian Room at Washington and La Brea in Watts in LA, and he had a bloody nose. Well, he kept on playing. The blood was gushing out of his nose. He was wearing a white suit. Finally, they said, Earl, come on, please stop. And he did, and they brought him backstage, and they tried to clean him up. Anyhow, Earl, some people are prima donnas. Who's the guy who goes, Keith Jarrett. Now, Keith is a genius times 5, but if somebody's breathing too heavily, he'll stop the show. Earl, you could do anything except throw bricks at him, and he'd continue to play. Anyhow, Earl would play these god-awful pianos, and we were doing the show, and every once in a while, Earl, like the decades went away, and one of the things Earl was famous for was he came up with stuff out of left field that you never heard. Very few musicians can do that. Charlie Parker did, Lester Young, Sonny Rollins, Louis Armstrong early in his career. They came up with stuff, it's like, oh my God. And when Earl was in one of those moments, it could be we were backstage, the piano, or the bass player and the drummer and I, we started giggling because it was so great. And that kind of provided you do the show regardless, you want to get paid, and you don't want to be punched. So you figure, well, man, here's a guy 78, he's done everything. And he's busting his butt every night. So, what was the question? I'm sorry.
I don't remember either, but I love where we went.
Okay.
I know that you said that if y'all have any questions,
Please.
Eric will take them at any time.
Anytime, interrupt me, tell me
So
I'm
if
full
you got
of-
an Earl Hines,
Yes, sir.
Peter.
Did you know when you first started working with Earl Hines, did you know that he was the Earl Hines? Or was he
Yes.
You did.
But to make things even a little goofy, there is something in downbeat called the blindfold test, where Leonard Feather would play a record for some guy, and it was to see, well, does the person being tested know who it is and what are his comments? And there's something Earl Hines did, a blindfold test, and he didn't know this guy, he didn't know that guy. And I think, oh my God, where's this guy been, under a rock? But once I was on the road with Earl, figure he's 78, he's done it all. All he wants is good food in the room service and good TV. And that's not unreasonable. So he didn't know about the new upcoming people. And I'm sure if he heard them, if they met with his approval, he would have been, 2 thumbs up. But that was, yes, I did know Earl Hines was like, I'm playing with Earl goddamn Hines, man.
over there?
Does segregation not exist in the music space? It seems like you guys mixed and mingled.
One of the things I was going to bring up was Norman Granz, who was a promoter who started something called Jazz at the Philharmonic. He was a booking agent. He did things on his own terms. You did it his way or forget it. Now Norman, I don't know if he did this in the deep south, but at least in the northern cities, quite often it was a practice to have the audiences segregated. And Norman said that will not happen. And the guy said, oh yes it will. And Norman said, I know the concert sold out. You want to blow an entire night's worth of, 1,000, 2,000 people? You're going to give up that money because you want this segregated? The guy thought about it and said, no. So Norman Granz took care of that. Now, there was something that I read about called TOBA, Theater Owners Booking Association. I'm talking about the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. And it was known more as tough on black asses. And they were a bunch of crackers and often set up. Earl believed in show up on time, be in the uniform of the day. Because it used to be, if some cracker club owner said, well, the third trumpet player's wearing a different tie, or the trombone player's shoes aren't shined, he would take it as a license to deduct what he was going to pay the band, which is, of course, hideous. But Norman Granz helped put some of that away. Now, quick Norman Granz story. I met him backstage. Here's where I get to drop some names. We're playing at the, I was going to drop names of them. Okay, it's in London. Royal Festival Hall. It's a Norman Granz production. The Count Basie Orchestra, Oscar Peterson and his group, and Ella Fitzgerald. And there's something called the Artists Bar, where the musicians could hang out and big contributors and donors. Well, Norman Granz took an almost immediate dislike to me. Now, usually it takes somebody, at least 30, 40 minutes to dislike. Norman hated me immediately. My problem was, Norman bought somebody said, Eric, have you ever met Norman Granz? It's an honor to meet you, Mr. Granz. Thank you for all the stuff you've done for music. And then he bought everybody around. Now, Norman had more money than God. And he had a place in Switzerland. He was friends with Picasso. He had Picassos and Renoirs on the wall. Anyhow, Norman bought everybody a drink. And he happened to walk by. Thank you, Mr. Granz, for the drink. For Christ's sake, call me Norman. Everybody calls me Norman. Well, ever since then, he didn't like me. Now, also part of the problem was I was white. And Norman was always, if you could hire a black musician or a white musician, if they were the same caliber, he would prefer a black musician. And I don't blame him. That doesn't really matter. What Norman did for music and for the musicians, there were guys like Lester Young and Billie Holiday who never made 2 cents. They started working with Norman Granz, and all of a sudden he was paying them real good dough. He made Ella a millionaire. He made Oscar Peterson a millionaire. He made, Basie was a millionaire, although he tried to piss it away on the horses. But happily, Basie stopped playing the horses. He was made, here's where I go on my tangents. Basie was made an employee of the Count Basie Orchestra. As if Basie had, hey Victor, if Basie had $10 in his pocket, he'd spend it on the horses. If he had $1,000, he'd spend it on the horses. And there's a famous Basie recording called Hay Burner, and nobody knew what the hell that meant. And later on, I learned Basie had a weakness for the ponies. And I guess all this horse did was, you bet on him and came in last, or he's still running or something. I'm sorry,
Well,
you asked about segregation of that. I'm talking about horses.
Well, I'm going to pick up where you left off there, which is Basie. And earlier you said, Earl was very supportive. He had his day in the sun. He wanted to help you.
Yes.
And then you ended up, with his approval, joining the Count Basie Orchestra.
Yes.
So I'm curious how that came about.
Well, two things. Earl was not in the greatest of health, and the tour was supposed to start, let's say, in January. Then it was February. Then it was March. Then I get a call from a guy by the name of Ed Crilly, who ran a couple radio stations in South Dakota and Minnesota. And he said, Count Basie's looking for a tenor player. Are you interested? I thought he was putting me on, because to play with the Basie band, I mean, man, that was it. I mean, I even used to practice looking bored. Now you look at the Basie guys at the sax section. Now they didn't have their legs crossed, but it was like Mount Rushmore. 5 guys, no emotion. It's just like, yeah, we know we're the best in the world. You come to us. So I get a call. Would you be interested in playing with Count Basie? Hell yes. And he said, Ed Johnson gave me your name. So I immediately called Ed Johnson, who was a great tenor player, but he had a family in the 40s, and he turned down opportunities to go on the road once he had a family. Now, he had an offer to join Louis Jordan, or Duke Ellington. And Louis Jordan paid significantly better than Duke. And Eddie had a family, so he went with Louis Jordan. Anyway, I called up Eddie. I said, "Hey Eddie, is this guy Ed Cook?" "Oh yeah, he's legit." So Ed said, "Well, let's meet." So we went to Rick's Cafe, and one of the stories is about Rick's Cafe and Jerry Kay, the maitre d'. But that's another, man. Forget Tonight Show. Let's just talk. Let's order more tacos and drinks for everybody.
That's what we'll do between the sets.
Okay,
Yeah?
so I met Ed Crilly at Rick's Cafe. Ed and his girlfriend, who was the cousin of, it was either Fathead Newman or Cleanhead Vincent, one of the two. And I don't know who the hell we heard. And my wife and I were there. And Ed was a very generous guy, and he had this thing called the Crilly Circle, which meant another round of drinks. And it's like, okay, well, after the first set, okay, well, let's stay for the second set. Okay. The Crilly Circle, by the end of the evening, we're like, so he gave me the approval to Basie's road manager, Sonny Cohn, and then I got a call from Sonny Cohn, and that's another story. But they said, at the end of the tour, Kenny Hing, who's a great saxophone player from Vegas, the band is playing in Vegas. He's going to stay there. There are 3 more dates. That will be your audition. Ooh, okay. So the Basie band was playing in LA, and the Basie band was also playing in Vegas. Well, my uncle knows some people in LA. He bought Elizabeth Montgomery's old house. Now, how many of you remember the TV show Bewitched? Okay, only of a certain, anyhow, she's a woman whose nose would wrinkle, and he bought her house. But anyhow, he got me in to see the Basie band. And then I went to Vegas, and because I had a little tape, because I knew I was playing with the Basie band. Well, seeing what's printed on the music and what's actually played, sometimes it's a very subtle difference, and you're not aware of it until you're playing on the band. So but even so, I had my little tape recorder. Now it shows you how long ago this was. The Sony Walkman. Now you guys have no idea what the Sony Walkman. It was a portable, only of a certain vintage, a portable cassette. And I had my little, the microphone out of the sport coat in my pocket. And I listened to it, and then the opportunity to play those 3 nights with Basie finally came. And I met the band in Detroit. And Eric Dixon, who was one of the funny guys in the band, great player, and I have recordings from the 60s of Eric Dixon with the Basie band backing up Sinatra. So how cool is that? So he said, "New boy." He said, "Come here. Get on the bus. This is your seat. This is where you sit until you leave the band or die, whichever comes first." So we did those 3 nights, 2 in Springfield, no, 2 in Missouri, The 3rd was in Chicago, at University of Illinois, Chicago, which is where I live. And the first 2 nights, I was so damn nervous. I had a flask. Didn't matter. Yeah, there's some, and again, trying to look cool, like the other 4 guys in the band, Mount Rushmore. And here I am. So the last night, we're playing UIC, and now you wouldn't know it, but I used to be a clothes horse, and I had suits galore. That's what Earl Hines did. That's what Duke Ellington did. That's what Billy Eckstine did. And if I talk until 4 o'clock, I'll tell you the story about the wardrobe battle between Billy Eckstine and Duke Ellington. But that's another story. Anyhow, I had a suit identical to the one that the Basie guys had. Now, the Basie guys, the suit, you could only buy it from some place in LA, 100% poly. Yeah. But I had a good suit. Well, it was a good suit, but it was old. So I'm getting the music together. I bend over. My pants had split right around my butt. So I wound up, usually when you take a solo, so you think you kind of walk back to your seats, walking back. Anyhow, that plus, okay, I had some cognac, and I said, well, I better have some more. I better have some more, because I had 20, 30, 40 friends, and apparently I was either more comfortable or I drank too much. Because all of a sudden it's like, oh man, I messed up. But we got through the gig, and the road manager, Sonny Cohn, asked the straw boss, the musical director, Bobby Plater, hey, what do you think? Sounds okay to me. Well, that's ringing endorsement indeed. So I got the call to join the Basie band, and I was with the band for about a year and a half.
Yeah. Wow. So you're telling me you played, yeah, you could apply for that.
Well,
So you're telling me you've toured 4 years with Earl Hines,
Yes.
and yet auditioning for the Basie band, playing with them, you're just all kinds of nervous.
oh, hell yes. Because with Earl, among other things, I'm one of 4 or 5 people. I make up my part as I go along. Now, granted, over the course of doing a show, for 6 nights a week, sometimes like when we were in Vegas or Reno, we do 3 shows a night. Yeah, even if I'm having a terrible night, I know I have enough together that I can not embarrass myself. But with Basie, you've got the music. And the Basie band was unique in that there are other bands that swung as hard, Duke Ellington, Lionel Hampton, maybe Jimmy Lunsford going back to the 30s or 40s, Artie Shaw, Benny Goodman. I don't know if they swung as hard as Basie, but the Basie band was precise. Now, not sterile precise. Some of the bands today, you get these kids right out of college, excuse me, and they can read fly poop. You put fly poop, they can read it right the first time. Well, that was not the case with Basie, and that's another story about a recording that I did, where I had 5 whole notes, and I messed up 4 of them. And the guy Sammy Nestico, who had written a zillion albums for Basie, he was walking up and down. Something doesn't sound right. And happily, they never isolated my mic. So yes, I was nervous as hell playing with Basie, and eventually I got pretty good at it. But you know, if you're playing one night with Earl, Jimmy Smith, we were playing again the Parisian Room in Washington and La Brea Streets. Jimmy Smith, the organ player, was there. Another night, Benny Carter, the great composer, arranger, saxophone player, trumpet player, was there. Sonny Stitt was there. Now, I knew Sonny from Chicago, and Sonny liked to intimidate people. He wanted to be the top guy. And I knew him enough, and you know, there's a bunch of us, 4, 5, 6 dumb white kids who used to go whenever Sonny Stitt or Gene Ammons was in town, Sonny Stitt, oh. And Sonny knew that I wasn't trying to, upstage him, but nevertheless, Stitt's in the third row. Or we're playing, and I have a solo, and I'm supposed to back up Sarah Vaughan. Okay. And there's no music. And the song I played 100 million times, All the Things You Are, which is a tough enough song in the original key, which is A flat. Well, Sarah did it either in E flat or D flat. So I didn't know. So I was like, okay. So and I have to get up there in front of the band, and well, apparently I didn't get fired, let's put it that way. But another quick story about Sarah. There was something where she was singing a ballad, and I'm supposed to play background figures in back of her. And I didn't. And she said after the show or the next night, hey, why didn't you play in back of me? I said, Miss Vaughn, what you say, I'm not really listening to you anyhow, play. But she was nice about it. Her name was Sassy, and for a reason. She did things her way. She had perfect pitch. And if she was mad at the piano player, one of the numbers, she would sing a cappella, and then the piano player would come in. Well, sometimes, just to be prickly, she sang, let's say the song is in C, she sang it in B natural or C sharp. So if the piano player, and there's no way, he can't discreetly, no, he has to be completely silent, and if he's off, he looks like the biggest fool in the world. And Sass occasionally would do that to him. Now, another story about Ella, segueing very quickly, I once proposed marriage to Ella Fitzgerald on behalf of my father. Because we were doing, it was one of these Norman Granz things, Basie, Ella, and Oscar, and Ella happened to be by herself, and I wanted to tell her how much I respected her, what a guess it was, a dream to play with her. And she, for one reason or another, was not surrounded by a lot of people. And I wanted to say something other than, gee, Miss Fitzgerald, you sure sound good. I love playing with you. Well, usually I think about that, I come up with something brilliant later. Well, fate was with me. Miss Fitzgerald, I'm a big admirer of yours. I love playing with you. My father plays your records all the time. Matter of fact, he's a big, would you consider marrying him? And she said, oh, honey, I can't cook. Well, to the guys in the band, she was sis, as in sister. I had not earned the right to call her sis. She was Miss Fitzgerald. Oh, Miss Fitzgerald, nobody would ever ask you to cook, blah, 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 blah. And I'd taken about 45 seconds of her time. That's enough. I let her know how much I loved working with her. I got the hell out of her face. And I think it was the following night I got in trouble. we were having breakfast, and here's Joe Pass, who's the guitar player. Here's somebody else, And there's one song that Basie always used to do, Ella used to do the last song, Sea Jam Blues, and it would be Booty Wood, the trombone player, Sonny Cohn, and Eric Dixon. And somehow I let it be known that, I would cut off my leg if I could be one of those guys trading choruses and trading fours with Ella. And so it was the last song. And now we'd like to do Sea Jam Blues, and we're gonna have Booty Wood, Booty, Sonny Cohn, Sonny, and Eric Schneider. Oh. Well, I had the presence of mind to have my little Sony Walkman, but I can't find it. Anyhow, I had a terrible read. Had I known I was, okay, look, I'll make it through the evening. Tomorrow I'll find a good one. So all of a sudden, I'm trading choruses and fours with Ella Fitzgerald. That was the stuff I listened to growing up. When Ella would trade fours with the guys in the band, or something impromptu, Ella with Duke Ellington's band. They didn't have the music, the band came up with stuff. That's the stuff I lived for. And all of a sudden I'm doing this, and I'm getting paid for this. I mean, is that a great scam or what?
And you didn't even have to cut off your leg.
Yes, true.
Well, I feel so badly because I feel like we're only scratching the surface here, and
Next year,
but I think we're at time. I think we're supposed to be starting classes right about now. So if you have a question for Eric, accost him later. Find him at the bar in the
please
band
do.
breaks. But would you give it up for Mr. Eric Schneider?
Thank you.
He'll be on stage
it's an
all
honor.
night.
Okay, next year, the train from Carnegie Hall, when the guy offered me a joint after not wanting to serve me. Bill Gates and Warren Buffett on the golf course. The son of a bitch who gave me 1.5 stars in Downbeat magazine.
I gotta write these down.
Tony Bennett crashing a post-bar mitzvah party in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. Okay,
So clearly we have enough for year 2. All right.
thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you,
man.
Eric.